It's time to go on the record with WRAL News.
Well, good evening. North Carolina is at a crossroads on education. A long-running fight over teacher pay has come to a head. The state is preparing a pilot program that may overhaul how we pay, license, and evaluate teachers. We're shifting how we teach reading in elementary schools, and all of our schools will be dealing for years with fallout from the pandemic. Welcome to On the Record. I'm Travis Fain. Tonight we dedicate our show to public schools. We have a four-person panel with broad expertise, and we'll start by discussing teacher pay reforms that moved this month through the State Board of Education. A lot of introductions here, so I'm going to start with just two. Julie Pittman with the State Superintendent of Public Instruction's office, which has shepherded some of these reforms, and Tamika Walker-Kelly, an elementary school teacher for 15 years, now president of the North Carolina Association of Educators, a teacher advocacy group with more than 25,000 members. Ms. Pittman, set the stage for us. Teacher salaries right now, largely based on years of experience. How would the reforms being discussed, how would they change that, and what's the overall goal?
Sorry, thank you for that question, Travis. We're really excited about this opportunity for reform because after so many years of talking about the importance that teachers need to have in increasing their compensation and salaries and support, we're able to really look at an overall reform model that will do so much more than that. It will help increase teacher salaries, but it will also help take away barriers to licensure, so that many of our teachers who for years have faced struggles in getting in the classroom, who could definitely be expert teachers for our students, those barriers will be taken away and be given more pathways to be able to get into the classroom. This is a transformational time in education because there are so many things that are in the ecosystem of how we do education in North Carolina that are finally moving forward in the same direction. And we're just really excited about the great opportunities for advancement that this could offer for our teachers, for our students, for our schools, and overall for our communities.
We'll get into the nitty-gritty of that. It is a major overhaul. And Ms. Kelly, I know a lot of people in your association are worried about these reforms, but that would mean significant raises for teachers. We've got a chart here showing the proposed salary changes, and the total difference in earnings over 30 years, according to the state calculations, will be more than $300,000 over the lifetime of a teacher there. Your organization has fought for years for better pay. Walk us through your concerns, though, on this particular proposal.
Well, thank you for having me on today, Travis. So first, our organization, NCAE, has continued to advocate and will continue to advocate for a teacher licensure and compensation system that respects the expertise of our educators in the classroom, that works to make sure that we increase the diversity of our workforce that matches the growing diversity of our student population, and offers support for teachers no matter where they fall on the career spectrum, from beginning teachers all the way up to our veteran teachers. We have had concerns around the Pathways proposal because we know that tying teacher license and compensation, so how we license and pay our teachers, to student test evaluation scores is problematic. We also have very real concerns about exacerbating disparities in our school system, especially for our educators who teach special education students or in schools that have high poverty. We are concerned that many of our other educators who teach in affluent schools or well-to-do communities will have better opportunities for higher pay than those teachers in our other schools.
Yeah, and I mean, the way this thing is going to work, is my understanding, is that its pay is kind of dependent on moving up a ladder that is based on evaluations that are at least in part due to test scores. My understanding is the details, a lot of them aren't set. The General Assembly is going to get into this over the next year. But Ms. Pittman, what happens to teachers who don't do well in these evaluations?
Well, so I think saying that the way that a teacher moves through this is solely based or majoritively based on test scores is not exactly accurate. While there are a lot of details that have yet to be worked out because there are some legislative issues that have to be covered first in order to be able to move forward. The opportunity for teachers to have autonomy and choice in how they are evaluated, how they're able to show their expertise in the classroom, and how they're able to grow their students over time is something that they currently don't have. Currently, right now, teachers who are renewing their license simply have to renew their license, which is great, and they're able to get their compensation based on their years of service. But this would allow for teachers in our early career statuses to be able to get greater support and be able to build their pedagogy and their skill and their expertise before they become a career status teacher. And once they reach that level 4, or what we currently know as like a career status teacher, then their years of service kick in, and they're able to show how they are being effective in the classroom, how they are able to show their expertise, and how they are currently working to improve schools, improve their students, and improve their own expertise in the classroom.
So one of the things about this proposal, the governor, by the way, expressed some support for it earlier this week or last when I asked him about it, because he said that this need for evaluation is something that he can sell Republicans in the General Assembly on in order to get higher teacher salaries. Ms. Kelly, so if we don't use the evaluation model that is part of this, although still the details are yet to be seen, what do you propose? What do you propose to kind of overhaul the system, if in fact you think it needs overhauling?
Well, one of the things that's really important is to point out that we have evaluation measures already currently used by our North Carolina public school teachers. We are evaluated per our North Carolina professional teaching standards, and we are judged by that. And so there are many different ways that our educators in the classroom model and show their expertise, not only in their content, but in their pedagogy as well. And for example, I am a music teacher. I don't do standardized tests in my classroom. And I use that measurement tool as a way to show my effectiveness with my students in classrooms. And so one of the things that we propose is that we have programs that worked, like North Carolina Teaching Fellows program, like our Teacher Cadet program that we host through our foundation. We also have rich PD experiences that we can offer our teachers, but we haven't fully funded or executed them with fidelity. And so we are not trying to repackage something that already exists as new. What we really want to do is show fidelity and commitment to the processes that we know work, that recruited high quality educators to North Carolina, and we can do so again.
If it kind of already exists, though, Ms. Kelly, what's wrong with this repackaging, particularly if it sells the legislature on boosted educational funding?
Well, one of the things that's really important is that we haven't received a sustained funding commitment to public education here in North Carolina. And that ties directly back to the North Carolina General Assembly. And it's not so much that we need to reform licensure for our educators, but we do need to reform pay and make sure that we are paying our educators professionally. But we do that in this equitable model that we have right now that has existed in every other state across our United States. If we adopted this new merit pay like proposal, we would be the first state in the nation to do so. And we do want to be first in education, but I'm not sure that is the way that we want to be first in education.
All right, this plan's been discussed for a while now. The State Board of Education voted recently to move forward, but only with a scaled-down pilot program. It's in an unknown number of school districts right now. Even that has to get General Assembly approval before it starts. We expect the legislature to discuss that next year when they come into session. We're going to take a break here. When we come back, more on this, and I'll bring in North Carolina's current Teacher of the Year, who's been involved in some of the planning on this process, for her thoughts here. All right, welcome back. We're joined by North Carolina's current Teacher of the Year, Leah Carper from Guilford County. Ms. Carper, you favor these changes on teacher pay and evaluation we've discussed. Is that right?
Yes, I do.
Tell us a little bit about why.
So I love that there are so many teachers that I speak with every day in North Carolina who are really struggling with the licensure model that exists right now. You know, I visited Hoke County Schools and I love it there because there are so many wonderful teachers. However, many of the teachers that they have are going through alternative licensure paths to try to become fully licensed educators there. And yet many times those teachers cannot pass all the requirements in order to become fully licensed teachers. They grow their students every year. They have wonderful evaluations from their principals, and their students love them, and yet they cannot pass the praxis exam, and then which means they cannot be licensed in North Carolina. What I love about this program is that this gives teachers multiple pathways to enter in the workforce.
All right, and Ms. Pittman, another reform on the move that's kind of tied to this is something called advanced teaching roles. And the idea is that good teachers shouldn't have to become principals to boost their salaries significantly. They can move into more of a split role, teaching, but also mentoring. They'd be better compensated. Where does that effort stand? Are we already paying teachers more for this, or is that something that's down the line?
So we are paying teachers more in some areas where we have, I want to say about 25% of some of our schools have advanced teacher roles already in practice, and those districts are able to pilot out the way that advanced teacher roles work. In other districts, there are opportunities that are locally created for teachers to have some leadership roles within their schools while also staying in the classroom. In other areas, the only path for advancement is for a teacher to leave the classroom and go into administration. Some of the way that the pay has been determined for that, as I said, has been locally. The pathways model that we're talking about right now would allow for, as it currently stands, state funding that would help assist in that. I think one of the things that is so important about this is that it allows some of our best teachers, our veteran teachers, our successful teachers to really help sustain and support our beginning teachers, our early career teachers, our teachers who are coming in, as Ms. Carper said, through a lateral entry or through a residency program, to be able to get more support. We see that our attrition rate for our beginning teachers is so much greater than our attrition rate for our non-beginning teachers. And I think a lot of that is due, in fact, that a lot of our teachers come either out of their educator prep program or through a residency model directly into the classroom with very little ongoing hands-on support. And in some cases where their residency teachers are the full teacher of record and are tossed right into a classroom without full-time or part-time support from a teacher who's practicing. This new pathways would allow for those teachers to get much more robust support and would pay those teachers who are doing that support much greater.
Ms. Carper, quickly if you can, is this something teachers want? And do you have faith that extra responsibilities will be paired with higher salaries?
That is the hope, right? That when, teachers are already doing so many extra responsibilities, we want to be paid as professionals. We want to be treated as professionals. And in the professional world, there are opportunities for advancement and for financial gain, and not just because of years of service, but also because of how great you are at your job. We have so many teachers who are so great at their job. I'm so excited that we'll have the opportunity to finally be able to pay them almost what they're worth.
All right, I want to bring in Dale Cole now. He's superintendent of schools in Clay County near the western tip of our state. He's former principal of the year here in North Carolina. Mr. Cole, thank you for your patience. Will you weigh in here on what you've heard so far?
Well, there are a lot of things to like about this pathway if it passes and is in fact fully funded, which is a huge question mark to me based on past history when it comes to the General Assembly and funding public education. That's just my opinion. But there are a lot of things to like. My big concern about this is, does it solve the problem of convincing high school students to enroll in educator preparation programs all across this state so that we can fill the thousands of teaching positions that are going to open over the next 10 years as baby boomers retire? And this has already started. I'm not convinced that this is going to do that all by itself. I think there are some other tried and true measures that have been removed that we could look at, such as just raising salaries like Mississippi just did. They raised their starting teacher salaries up to 41,000 plus. Certainly North Carolina could do that. We could expand teaching fellows. I don't know why we as a state wouldn't want to invest in teaching fellows to help any student who wants to become a teacher in our schools to do that, but particularly in our rural areas. We were talking about advanced teaching roles. Every time you pull a teacher out of a section of teaching kids in rural areas, we don't have local teaching positions that we can afford to pay for that create room in the schedule for that. Every time you remove a teacher and you say we're gonna put you in an advanced role and a leadership role, everyone else's class sizes get larger. So in the larger, more well-funded districts, they have space in the schedule for that. Most of North Carolina is rural. We don't have space for that.
Yeah, so it's a domino effect and also a teacher shortage. We're going to take a break here, but before we do that, I want to tell folks, Teaching Fellows, that's a program where your tuition at college is forgiven if you teach in a certain part of the state or in the state. We'll come back. We're going to talk about changes to the reading curriculum in North Carolina that are moving forward. Stick with us. Thanks for sticking with us. We began a fundamental shift in recent years in how we teach reading in this state. A program called The Science of Reading. It's modeled after some things Mississippi did and saw good success with. I'm sure it's more complicated, but as I understand it, there's a lot of focus on phonics. Ms. Walker, I want to come to you here. What do you think of these changes? Will they help children learn to read?
Well, the first thing to note is that it is important for every student in our state to have literacy skills in order for them to participate in their communities and the broader society. We know we are in the middle, across the United States, in the middle of what is called the reading wars about how we determine what is the best way to teach reading. And regardless of what method that North Carolina has chosen, it is important to know that our teachers need the resources in order to best meet the academic needs of our students. And so that means additional personnel in the classroom to do that small, intensive, high needs instruction so that our students make literacy gains throughout the year. Now, it is a little too early to tell whether or not it compares to pre-pandemic data around literacy rates, but we are seeing some growth in our students, but we need to continue to invest in our schools so that all of our students make those academic gains.
So one way I've heard this described is that our brains, they're not really wired to read, and these methods are meant to develop neural pathways through particular exercises. I want to come to you, Ms. Carper. What do you hear from teachers about the science of reading? What do you think about it? What do some of your colleagues think about it?
Any elementary school teacher who I have spoken to has said that this is transformative work, that this is changing the way that they think about reading instruction. And what's cool about the specific science of reading training that our teachers are engaging in is it helps them understand why a student doesn't understand a certain aspect of reading, like what the issue is, and then it helps them understand how to attack that and how to help that student be successful. And so teachers think it's completely transformative, and they're very, very, very excited about this work. Now, this is work. This is a very long process. It's a 2-year commitment, and they're completing 8 units of study. And it's a lot for our teachers. Many of our elementary school teachers, they feel like they're in a master's class doing this work. But even though they talk about the stress of that and the how intense that is, those teachers are also talking about how, again, transformative it is for their students. Even, after 1 day of instruction, so many teachers have said, this is it. I'm so excited. And so I'm hopeful that this will be wonderful for educators all over North Carolina. I teach high school, and I have students who are on 4th grade reading level many times. I am so excited to see what this will do as it comes up, as the students come through the pipeline.
Well, that's nice to hear. That's hopeful news. Mr. Cole, we talk a lot about teaching children to read and read well by the 3rd grade. What is it about the 3rd grade? And also, how does a child get that far in school without knowing how to read in some cases?
Well, I think just transition-wise, the complexity of reading advances quite a bit after 3rd grade. So that makes 3rd grade extremely important. To a different part of your question, many times there's a huge disparity. I would say the largest disparity in literacy that we see is in kindergarten. And many times our students don't have access to pre-K. And some of our students do. They come into pre-K and there's a huge disparity between the student that struggles the most and the student that is ahead. And it can take 2 to 3 years or more to close that gap. And that's whether there's a documented learning disability or what. And it depends on the resources at home, many times almost as much as the resources at the school. And there again, rural areas are at a disadvantage due to the resources that are available to them. So that's how it can happen. It can also happen when we have an open teaching job in kindergarten or first grade or second grade that we can't fill because we don't have any applicants for them. So when a kid has a year with a substitute teacher, it'll take 2 to 3 years to try to close that gap. So that's another way that it can happen that is very common in rural areas at this time.
Yeah, when we talk about the gap, something every school is dealing with right now is pandemic learning loss. I mean, simply put, most kids don't learn as well with remote schooling. I know you're out in Clay County. I'm assuming you have some internet connectivity issues. How big of a problem has that been, particularly the pandemic learning loss? And what can the state do, Mr. Cole, to help you and other districts like yours?
Well, we did have some issues at the beginning of the pandemic. We were not ready to go fully online, nor were our teachers really trained properly to be fully online teachers. And I think a lot of people were in the same boat all across the state. In the mountains, we had many more areas that did not have access to even cell signal, much less broadband. We've been able to improve that. I think we got things up to 80 to 85%. I want to commend the General Assembly for the money that they've allocated to try to create some last mile internet connections in our rural areas in the Far East and the Far West. That's going to be extremely helpful. But again, I'm going to go back. It is important that we convince people to apply for educator prep programs to teach, for example, high school math. Because I'm telling you, if we don't, in 10 years, I would say half the kids in this state are going to be learning high school math online. And I think that the data shows clearly during the pandemic that didn't work very well. So I'm very concerned about the future of our schools if we don't convince more of our high school students to go to be teachers.
Ms. Pittman addressed that, the pipeline issue. How do we convince people to become teachers? I mean, obviously a lot of it is money, right?
I think a lot of it is money, but I think it is also so much more. And I'm excited about what we're doing at the state to not only look at how we can pay teachers more, but how we can support teachers throughout their career and how we are looking at what we're doing as a state to really support the whole child and to give students who are in elementary, middle, and high school an idea of what it looks like to become a teacher or to become whatever it is that they want to become after graduation. We just had a conference in the end of October where we had a lot of our different ways of how to build a pipeline from middle school and high school on up. We had lots of people who came and talked about their teacher cadet programs, lots of people who talked about their homegrown programs, like in Johnston County, where they have a JOCO Teach program that they are building teachers from their middle and high schools classrooms to want to become teachers and who are getting that teaching experience. I recently visited Mount Olive University, where the majority of the people who are in their educator prep program said that the reason why they chose to become—
All right, I'm sorry, I hate to cut you off, but I'm going to do it. Not every day I get to do it. That's about all we have time for. Thank you so much to our guests for joining us, for the hard work you do educating our children. To those of you at home, you can reach out to us on Twitter, find us at WRAL.com. Thank you tonight for your attention.